You asked why the furnace log showed nothing unusual that night. I never told you everything. The burner bay smelled of dust and hot steel. The blower hummed low. The control panel glowed dull amber. The furnace was off. The panel said off. And something inside it was screaming. It wasn't loud at first, more like pressure pushing through metal. A wet sound strained braking. I was standing at the Retort door with the tag clipboard, Ohio license posted on the wall, county seal peeling at the corner. I waited for the scream to stop. It didn't. It shaped itself into breath. That was the first mistake. I've worked this job for over a decade, long enough that days blur, long enough that death loses its edge. You learn the routine early, verify paperwork, check identification, log time and temperature. Nothing surprises you after a while. I've run hundreds of cremations, more if you count assists, night shifts mostly. The night crew sees everything. People who work near the dead share that quiet understanding. The decedent came in just after 2. Male, unclaimed. Paperwork said time of death was 1 hour earlier. Hospital release was clean. No flags. Skin temperature felt warmer than expected. Not wrong. Just late to cool. Liver was set along the back, purplish, even. Rigor was present in the jaw, partial, hands still loose. I told myself it was normal. Hospitals move fast. Bodies lag. I wiped the eyelids before transfer. That's when I noticed it. One lid didn't settle evenly. It slid, then stopped. I paused, just a second. Muscle reflexes happen. Residual nerve firing. Anyone trained knows that. I pressed the lid closed again. It held. I logged intake weight. I checked the toe tag twice. Was it real, or am I imagining this? I pushed the stretcher toward the Retort. Steel wheels complained. The scream stopped. Silence is common after movement. Pressure equalizes. Air escapes. I slid the body onto the charging tray. Centered, arms aligned. Gloves snapped tight on my wrists. I clenched my jaw. We follow sequence for a reason. Door seal first, then ignition. I closed the Retort door, engaged the latch, did not start the cycle. The panel still read off. I stepped away to log the entry. Time written in block letters. 2:07. The building settled around me. No noise, no movement. Okay, maybe nothing happened. I rinsed the tray, checked the scrubber line, adjusted the damper. That calm is dangerous. It makes you sloppy. 5 minutes passed, then another. The scream came back. It was closer now, thicker, like lungs working against weight. I looked at the control panel. No ignition light, no temperature rise. The Retort was cold. I placed my palm against the steel door, barely warm, room temperature. Something violated a biological expectation right then. Sound needs air. Air needs space. The scream dragged. It broke, then tried again. I checked the blower. Manual override off. Everything dead. We tell ourselves patterns explain everything. That's how we keep functioning. People who work near the dead learn to trust instruments over instincts. I stepped back, listened. The sound wasn't random. It pulsed, timed, like breathing. I radioed the front desk. No answer. I didn't call a supervisor. I knew what they'd say. No one believes us when things don't fit charts. The scream rose, then cut off. The silence after was worse. I remembered Rule 4 then. Every crematory has a version. Once the door closes, it stays closed, no matter what you hear. That rule exists for safety and liability and sanity. I stood there too long. My breath hitched. If the person wasn't dead, opening meant everything. If they were opening meant nothing good. I reached for the latch. Stopped. The scream returned. Clear now. Human. I broke. That was the frustration moment. one sharp breath, one curse under my breath. "Stay back," I said. To no one. I disengaged the lock. Metal clicked. The door eased open an inch. Heat rushed out. Not fire heat, body heat. The charging tray was empty. No body, no ash, no movement. The scream came from behind me. I turned too fast. My shoulder hit the rail. Pain snapped bright. The sound was inside my head now. Pressing, demanding. I shut the door. Hard. The panel still read, "Off." I backed away, hands shaking, sweat under gloves. I checked the logs again. Everything clean, everything correct. Later they said the camera feed glitched. Later they said stress does things. No one believed the scream. I finished the shift. Logged out at dawn. It didn't look back. The unresolved detail still sits with me. That warmth, that timing. I never opened another retort early. Not once. Not everything that stops breathing stays still. You asked how I knew the retort was cold. I never told you what I heard next. The blower's low hum was steady, and everything looked blue-gray. I was tightening the charge tray stop with a box wrench. My glove squeaked on stainless. Then the scream started again. It came from inside the retort, not from the building, not from the ducting, from behind that sealed door. I glanced at the panel. The display read, "Off." No flame icon, no heat rise. The sound wasn't random. It had rhythm, like forced breathing. I stepped closer and listened. The scream broke, then returned, like someone running out of air. That should not happen in a cold chamber, not with a body that's been released. I checked the timestamp on the wall clock, 4:48 a.m. I wrote it on the log without thinking. We run night shift differently than day shift. Less chatter, more process. People who work near the dead learn to trust machines. We also learn when machines are lying. I kept my tone calm. I always do. First, I verified the interlock. The retort door latch was engaged. The safety pin was seated. Second, I checked the gas train. Main valve closed. Pilot disabled. Third, I checked the afterburner. Stacked dampers set. No ignition request. Every indicator said the system was dead. But the scream kept pushing through steel. I put the back of my knuckles on the retort faceplate. That's the quick check. Heat bleeds through first at the gasket line. It felt like room temperature. Neutral. Cold enough that my skin didn't flinch. I hesitated. Just long enough to hear the sound change. The scream turned wet, like saliva catching in the throat, like lungs pulling. That violated a biological expectation right there. Sound needs air movement. Air movement needs space. In a sealed retort, there is no room to breathe. Not with the charge door latched, not with the draft off. I didn't say what the hell. I didn't want the walls to hear it. I grabbed the infrared thermometer from my cart. Cheap tool, reliable habit. I aimed at the door skin. The readout showed 72 degrees Fahrenheit, normal for the room. The gasket seam read warmer, 78 degrees Fahrenheit, just a thin line. That made no sense, not unless heat was coming from inside. But the burner was off. I opened the side access panel with a flathead, checked the thermocouple leads. No melt, no scorch. I listened again. The scream pulsed 3 times, then stopped. Silence hit hard. My jaw clenched without permission. Then I heard something else. Not a scream now. A cough. One cough. Soft. Human. I backed up 1 step. My boots squealed on epoxy. I forced myself into routine. Routine keeps you alive in this job. I looked at the paperwork again. Time of death was written as 1:45 a.m. Cause listed as cardiopulmonary arrest. Rigor was noted as early. Livor was described as posterior fixed. I had seen it myself. Purple pooling along the back, shoulders, hips, calves, If that liver was fixed, blood had settled. If blood had settled, circulation was gone. That cough should not exist. I keyed the radio. Front desk, you copy, no answer. I keyed it again. Tom, you there, still nothing. No one believes us when we report the wrong kind of sound. They think stress writes stories in your ears. I stared at the panel lights. All dark. Off meant off. The scream returned. Louder now. It didn't fill the room. It aimed at me. I moved to the side window port. Most retorts have one, even if you never use it. A small viewing glass with a hinged cover. I flipped the cover up. My hand shook once. Inside was darkness. No glow, no flame reflection. The glass had fog on the inside. Condensation, a faint smear like breath. That should not happen in a dry chamber. Not unless moisture was rising, not unless something warm was exhaling. I put my ear close to the steel. The scream was muffled, but the cadence was clear. It sounded like someone trying to form words. Open it, a voice shaped itself. Not loud, just enough. I swallowed. My breath hitched. Then the training kicked in. Rule 4. Every crematory has a version of it. Ours was printed on the laminated safety sheet. It sat above the start switch. Once the retort is closed for a case, it stays closed. No exceptions. Not for noise, not for doubt. That rule protects the staff. It protects evidence. It protects the facility. It also protects you from doing something you can't undo. I stepped back from the door. Hands open like that meant anything. I didn't touch the latch. Not yet. The scream shifted again. It sounded like panic now, like someone realizing they were trapped. I glanced at the charge tray control. It was still extended. The body should have been on it. I pictured the decedent's eyelid, how it didn't settle right, how the skin felt warm for too long. I told myself it was post-mortem heat retention. Obesity can do that. Heavy tissue holds warmth. I told myself it was residual air in the airway, pressure escaping. I told myself everything I'd told myself for years. The scream cut off mid-breath. Then 3 knocks hit the inside of the retort. Knock, 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 short, measured. Those knocks had spacing, like a person conserving oxygen, like a person who knows time is running out. I moved my hand toward the latch. Stopped. That was the moral trap. It was clean and simple. If I opened the door and nothing was wrong, I broke Rule 4. I could lose my job. I could lose my license. If I didn't open the door and something was wrong, I'd live with it. Forever. The scream came back quieter. A rasp. Please, it said. I felt anger spike up, not at the voice, at the situation. That was my one frustration moment. A sharp exhale, a single ugly thought. This job is supposed to be certain. I forced my voice into a small box. Stop talking, I said. The words came out flat. 8 syllables, all procedural instinct. I checked the retort camera feed on the monitor. We have one aimed at the chamber mouth. It's mostly for operator error documentation. The screen showed static for 1 second. Then a still image. The charge tray was empty. There was a dark streak on the tray rails. Thin, wet, not blood, not bright. It looked like fluid that had separated, like purge fluid, darker and watery. That shouldn't be there. Not unless a body had leaked. Not unless internal pressure had forced something out. I thought of livor again. Pooling. Pressure. I thought of the abdomen. Gas forms. Tissue breaks down. But not this fast. Not in 2 hours. I reached for the latch again. Then I stopped myself. I needed one more check. One more piece of reality. I slid my hand along the gasket seam, gentle. Tactile only happens when you touch the body. So I touched the door instead. The seam felt warmer than before. Not hot, but alive. 78 degrees became 84 degrees Fahrenheit on the infrared, only at the seam. Warmth was building without ignition. That means energy was coming from something else, something inside. The scream turned into a wheeze, a long pull, then nothing. Silence, then a whisper, not from the retort. From the hallway behind me. "Don't," someone said. I turned. No one stood there. Just my reflection in the glass door of the prep room. Pale face, blue gloves. The blower hum kept going. The building kept breathing. The prep room door was ajar. I know I closed it. I didn't move toward it. I didn't look away from the retort either. That's the part people don't understand. In moments like this, you split in half. One half is the worker who follows Rule 4. The other half is the person who still believes screams mean life. I stood there until my wrists ached, until my jaw relaxed, until the quiet felt like a verdict. And in that quiet, I noticed something small, a detail that still drags at me. The panel was off, but the timer on the data logger had started counting anyway. Not everything that stops breathing stays still. You asked what finally made me touch the latch. I never told you what my hand felt like. The blower's hum was still there, thin and constant. The room stayed gray-blue under the fluorescence. I wiped my gloves on my apron and checked the retort seal again. The sound hadn't stopped. It waited. I stood close enough to smell hot dust in the steel. That smell only comes when metal's been stressed, not heated. Stressed. The sound wasn't louder now. It was clearer, like a voice choosing its words. I placed the clipboard back on its hook. Paper rattled once. That small noise made the scream pause. I checked the wall clock. 7:32 a.m. Shift change was coming. Procedures say you document anomalies immediately. Procedures also say you do not interfere mid-case. People who work near the dead learn to balance rules against consequences. I leaned in toward the control panel. Off still glowed in dull red letters. No timer, no ignition request. I tapped the screen once. Nothing changed. The scream scraped through the door again. Short, sharp. I pressed my jaw tight. That pressure felt familiar, like bracing for a mistake. I ran through the steps again. Gas line closed, pilot disabled, afterburner idle. This should not have been possible. Sound requires motion. Motion requires energy. Something violated a biological expectation I trusted. I reached for the viewing port. My hand hovered, then dropped. The voice changed pitch. Lower now. Closer, help it said. That word landed wrong. Too clean, too practiced. I stepped back until my calves hit the cart. Metal clinked. The floor drain beneath the retort had a dark halo. Thin fluid, clear enough to reflect light. Purge fluid follows gravity. It doesn't crawl. I looked at the safety placard again. Rule 4 sat in bold letters. Once the door is closed, it stays closed. I said it out loud. Door stays closed. The scream broke into coughing again, dry, controlled. I checked the paperwork one last time. Name unknown, age estimated mid-50s. Time of death was written as 1 hour 45. Release signed at 2:15. Rigor should have been spreading. Jaw first, neck next. Livor should have stayed fixed. Those facts lined up on paper. They fell apart in sound. No one believes us when machines disagree with ears. I grabbed the thermal probe from the drawer. Long metal stem, battery half full. I slid it into the gasket gap. Just a centimeter, just enough. The reading climbed fast. 86 degrees Fahrenheit, then 90. Heat was increasing without flame. That meant energy was coming from inside. My breath hitched once. Sharp, unplanned. I pulled the probe free and wiped it clean. Fluid beaded on the tip. Clear, slick. That fluid shouldn't have been warm. The scream stopped completely. Silence pressed in. It felt heavier than the noise. Then 3 taps came from inside. Measured, slow, tap, 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 spacing like someone counting seconds. I clenched my jaw again, hard enough to ache. This was the moment. Open or don't. If I opened the door and found nothing, I broke Rule 4. If I didn't open it and found out later, I'd never stop replaying this. That's the real trap in this job. Not fear, responsibility. I reached for the latch. That was my frustration moment. A quiet curse. One breath pushed out through my nose. My fingers wrapped around the handle. Cool steel, smooth. Tactile feedback matters. It grounds you. I turned the latch a 1/4 inch. The lock disengaged with a click. The sound inside rushed forward immediately, like pressure escaping. I pulled. The door opened a hand's width. Heat rolled out, not burning, living. The charge tray was empty. No body, no ash, just streaks on the rails. Fluid had pooled near the lip, clear with darker flecks. I opened the door wider. The scream came from behind me. I spun, too fast. My shoulder clipped the cart. Pain flashed bright and brief. The hallway stood empty. Prep room lights on, door open. Someone had been breathing there. I stepped back to the retort. The chamber was dark. Dry walls, no movement. The back wall bore scratch marks, fresh, parallel. Those scratches were at chest height. I closed the door slowly, didn't latch it. The sound stopped. My hands shook once, then steadied. I checked the data logger mounted under the panel. It shouldn't have been active. The timer was running, counting seconds. The panel still read off. I stared at the numbers climb. 10 seconds, 20. Scientific collapse doesn't feel dramatic. It feels administrative. I shut the door fully and engaged the lock. Rule 4 restored. Too late. I backed away and sat on the stool, breathing slow, measured. People who work near the dead learn how to sit with consequences. I stayed there until shift change. Didn't mention the noise. Didn't log the heat spike. The supervisor signed off without looking up. Later I scrubbed the rails. Bleach solution at standard ratio. The streaks faded but didn't disappear. The floor drain stain returned by afternoon. Same shape, same place. I finished the paperwork at 8:45, clocked out. Driving home, my hands smelled like metal no matter how much I washed. I didn't sleep that day, or the next. When I came back, the retort log showed a complete cycle. Ignition recorded. Temperatures normal. No one believed there had been a problem. The unresolved detail still waits for me. That timer starting on its own. That warmth without fire. And every time I hear a sound where there shouldn't be one, I remember the latch. Not everything that stops breathing stays still. If you work anywhere near the dead, you already know why rules like that exist. If this story made you pause for even a second hit, like, it tells me you understood the moment, not just the story. If you've ever heard something that didn't match the instruments, leave a comment. I want to know what you did next. And if you want more stories from people who aren't supposed to be scared, subscribe. Because these aren't urban legends. They're shifts people still clock into. Here's the question I still don't answer. Would you have opened the door, yes or no? No explanations needed. If you know someone who works nights hospital funeral home, EMS, send this to them. They'll understand why.